It's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I wanted to come back with a scouting series today on a midfielder that I thought was, I'll be honest with you, I thought was really, really interesting, being linked with Aston Villa, because it was a position that maybe we don't think we need at Villa, but it just goes to show the potential forward planning or future planning that Monchi and Vidigani and the guys have with regards to this team. And it's Neil Aynaoui, Aynaoui, if I butcher his name, I do apologize. He's a player, midfield player, plays with RC Lens. He's 24 years of age, but he's 23 years of age, going on 24. Real interesting player. I found him really interesting. I watched a couple of his games yesterday. I'll be honest, he's not somebody that's been massively on my radar. I think the biggest thing that I knew about him was that he scored 2 goals against Monaco only a couple of days ago. That was the first time I saw anything. I was doing my roundup of games in Ligue 1, and I saw him, and he scored 2 goals, and kind of piqued my interest. But didn't do any watching of him, didn't do anything at all. And then we were linked yesterday, if not the day before, and I sat down and I actually watched 4 games of his. I watched the game he played against Brest. I watched the game he played against Marseille. I watched the game he played against Toulouse. Excuse me. And then I watched that game where he scored 2 goals against Monaco. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching him. I really, really did. He's a central midfielder, but you're talking box-to-box midfielder. This guy is a box-to-box type guy. It's a funny one, because when you look at him, when you see him in the majority of his work, he tends to kind of stay in that defensive mold, like as a 6. But when the team breaks on a counter-attack, he's gone. He's absolutely gone, like a whip it up the field. He's about 6'1" as well, so he's no slouch. And the reason I bring that up is will become apparent in a moment. But yeah, going back to his box-to-box capabilities, that's one thing that really, really struck me. He's well able to settle in and settle into a defensive structure under, and he was under Will Still as well, who's gone to Southampton recently at Lens, and what that structure that Still had really, really suited him, really did. Specifically at the end of the year, he finished the year with a great aplomb. He was absolutely on fire to finish the season. Had a bit of an injury in the middle of the season, came back absolutely, fired up to end the season on top form, and he did that. He really did that. When he sets up in that kind of defensive structure, he's not a guy that's really going to attack the player with the ball, but he's brilliant at stuffing space. Like, he will stand in that passing lane, and he just instinctively knows to get into that passing lane. From a point of view of positioning, I found him a really, really good watch. A really good watch. He just always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. He always seemed to be around the ball as well if the ball was turned over. Maybe he wasn't the one always turning it over, but if he was around the ball when the ball was being turned over. And that allowed him, I suppose, that kind of heightened his presence in the counter-attack, which I thought was really interesting. Without kind of giving him a comparison to any player that we have, I'm going to compare him slightly to a player that we have, because when he has the ball at his feet, his passing ability as well, I was quite impressed with it. I was quite impressed by the deftness of his passing. I was quite impressed by when he did get the ball forward, or when he did get forward, when he had the ball, he had a lovely weight of pass and touch in and around the box, a la Youri Tielemans. And we know that we've been affected this year when Youri Tielemans wasn't in the team. So he's not a direct comparison to Youri Tielemans, but think of what Youri Tielemans has been asked to do in that 6th position for Villa. This guy is doing it already for Lens, and I think he's been impressive when he's been asked to do it, or the bits that I saw of him, should I say, have been impressive. he does more defensive work than Yuri Tielemans. But I think that's really what, because he was initially brought in the team as a kind of a central midfield, defensive midfielder, and he's added this kind of lung busting performances to his game in the latter half of the season, and it's been really, really great to see. Other kind of things that stick out to me is just looking at him from a statistical point of view. And I saw that game against Brest where he scored a penalty. He's a good penalty taker. He's 24, as I say. He's 24 years of age. He's been trusted with penalty taking at Lens. I think he scored four or five penalties last year. But when he hits penalties, the one against Brest anyway, the one I saw against Brest, and I think actually I skipped through and I watched another one on my scout. They were top corner penalties. They weren't rolling them in the bottom corner, So they were nice penalties, put it that way. I mentioned he was 6'1". What I do like about him as well is that game against Toulouse that I watched. He was, I won't say he was dominant in the air, but put it this way, he was making sure people didn't win that ball. But the reason I bring that game up is that in the Toulouse game, he scores a brilliant header, gets into the box, onto the penalty area, late run, ball is crossed in, bang, header into the bottom corner. He also scored a header against Monaco as well on the last day of the season. Actual carbon copy, late run into the penalty area, kind of engaged the defender, peeled off him, cross comes in, lovely little header down into the bottom corner, and gave the goalkeeper no chance. One of the things we've missed from our midfielders this year is a consistent goal threat. And one of the things we've missed from our team as an absolute whole this year is somebody who's willing to run in and get on the end of a cross. Aston Villa, one of my big criticisms, I think, of Aston Villa's build-up play, probably for 5 years now, is that we don't tend to get people on the end of crosses. We cross the ball an awful lot. And crosses are the crosses the Villa use are kind of almost used to get a defense to turn and move around, as opposed to allow our players to get on the ball, if that makes sense. Especially with our counter-attacking ability and our ability to swap to flip the field. Having somebody like this that can burst onto it and is confident at scoring goals with his head would be very, very beneficial. Give you a bit of a background to this guy. So that's just some of my notes that I have on him. I've got loads more on him as well that I'll chat about when we bring up his statistical sheet here in a moment. But he's a product of AS Nancy's Youth Academy, professional debut in 2021. Impressed in the third tier of French football in the Championnat, and he scored 6 goals, I think, in that season as well. And he might have played every single game in his debut year as well. Then he joined Lens in 2023 for meager fee. I think it was about 500,000, 600,000. Had a few injury setbacks. He was actually supposed to join Monaco at the start of this season, but had an injury setback, failed the medical because he was still injured. And that move did not materialize, and he ended up staying with Lens as well. And it was good that he did, because he became a key player under Will Still. Will Still really trusted him, and he really trusted him to play that fluid formation, that dogged yet fluid formation that Will Still plays, because he's really resilient and he's a superbly adaptable player, and he showed that throughout the course of the season. It seems like, as I said before, that Will Still brought him into play as a defensive midfielder, but just couldn't keep the shackles on him, because he was so good at, when they were breaking forward, staying with the man who was breaking, staying on the shoulder, being an open option, or getting those second balls higher up the field. Because one of the best things that he has is he's a brilliant presser of the ball. He doesn't press and engage like you would maybe think, John McGinn might. But what he does is he gets in the way of those passing areas. And when he does that higher up, it allows other players it panics players who are less familiar with the ball at their feet. And he can become a real asset in winning the ball back high up the field as well. As I say, he's very, very versatile from that point of view. And he's shown us that, like, the games I watched were all at the end of the season. I spoke to a French. So some of you guys might know that I know a guy who works as a scout for a football agent agency. And I got onto him and I asked him if he could give me any information on this guy. He said that he's extremely well thought of. Injuries and he was kind of I won't say he was a late bloomer, but he was somebody that got there. He was kind of overlooked in French football, and he was almost overlooked at Nancy as well. And then when he got his debut, people couldn't overlook him anymore. So like he got his debut 4 years ago, so he was 20 years of age, and he's kind of really just grabbed it and worked extremely hard. So he's known as an extremely hard worker, but he's known to now he's been known over the last year and a half as being a real dynamic presence in that midfield. You know, as I say, it allows him to drift between the lines, contributing both defensively and offensively, as I mentioned there previously as well. And it was really only in this season where he took on that increased attacking responsibility. So I'm glad that I got that feedback from my mate as well, because everything I read, I'd seen that, but also you could see in when he came back from injury, as I say, I took a 4-game series over when he came back from injury, and you could see that literally from that the first game that I watched to the last game that I watched, that he was getting more involved, and it was a case of, we need you to get up there and get on the end of those balls, because he was just so good at it, you couldn't stop him from doing it. So my own notes here, I'm just going to open them up just to make sure I haven't missed anything. So aerial ability, strong in aerial duels. So we'll say some sites will say he's 5'11", some sites will say he's 6'1". I'd say he's closer to 6'1", to be honest with you, because he's a bigger guy in the field. He's very good, actually. This is one thing I saw. I didn't see a whole pile of it, but when I saw it, I went, yeah, I'll take that. He can take set pieces. You know, he seems to be pretty composed. He can deliver a ball from a set piece. When I mentioned his defensive ability, one of the big things, you will see it in the statistical page that I bring up here now, is he's really good at intercepting the ball. So he's not a guy who's going to go to ground, going to make a massive tackle on somebody. But what he's going to do is he's going to get in, he's going to intercept the ball, and he just offers so much in both sides of play. You know, he's just a nuisance in the box when he's attacking. He's a nuisance in the defensive third when he's defending. So like, he's definitely somebody that is honing his skill, but he's getting better. That's what I mean by he's a hard worker. You know, my French mate mentioned to me that he was, 2 years ago, he didn't have this all-around game. He was either one or the other. And now, like, the amount of work he's put into his game, the amount of diligence he's showed, specifically, I suppose, really since Will Still has been his manager, has really driven him on, and he's improved immeasurably in that period of time. And I like that. I like to hear that, because it's an intangible. And somebody actually messaged me. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been a guy by the name of Brian Hennessy. He messaged me and asked me if you can scout intangibles like leadership and stuff like that. And all you can really do is get stories or get second opinions from people who will say that, this guy works really hard, and he's an asset in the dressing room, or he's an asset in the training field because of the way that he works. And I'll take those guys all day long. I will take those guys all day long, and I think Villa, Aynaoui Emery will appreciate those guys. So yeah, where else are we here? Yeah, so obviously, look, with every player, there's going to be some limitations. I think one of the ones that I found with regards to him is that, this year was his first real year with attacking output. That's not really a limitation, but I like to see. I'm an evidence-based person. I like to see that see a history maybe of that output. It's not to say that he won't have the same output again in the next season, but this season he was tasked with taking penalties. I like to see that he's mentally strong. He's mentally resilient. From the point of view that he only had his debut 4 years ago as a professional footballer to where he is now, he's had a kind of a fast rise. So I'd like to see that attacking output a small bit more. I actually had the same opinion, or the same point on somebody like Brennan Johnson as well previously. I just like to see maybe 2 years, 3 years of that attacking output. This guy doesn't have that in his locker, but that's fine. That's not a knock on him at all. One of the other things that I would say with him as well is he's really good at the short passes. Intermediate passes, he's pretty good at, but sometimes the distribution of a long pass as well needs a small bit of refinement. The tendency to under and over hit them, and I'm not too disappointed with that either. Once again, I've only seen a 4-game stretch of him. I'm not too disappointed with that, but it's just something that like I was much more comfortable with him playing triangles in midfield or moving with the ball, playing 1-2 passes and moving that ball up the field, or playing around the corner passes to strikers or through balls or little dinked passes in and around the box. He was way more adept at playing passes in and around the box than when he got the ball in a defensive situation and maybe he needed to play a long raking pass. It just didn't seem to be something that he was particularly comfortable with. And that's fine. That's fine. Let's see if he can overcome that as well. So I think probably his technical refinement in that area is probably something that I would look at. That's it, really. Like he's a hard person to do a scouting review on, because I've only seen 4 games of him. But what I saw was actually quite positive. He has the tangibles and seemingly the intangibles. He has the ability with the ball at his feet. He has the ability with the ball in the air to be a good aerial presence, and he's been tasked with taking penalties. And I think, to be honest with you, Aston Villa need all 3 of those within this team. We have still massive question marks over who takes penalties for our team, and that shouldn't happen in a professional football team. But literally, I would say going back 15 years, we've had issues with we've never had a stable penalty taker year on year, and we're probably there now at the moment as well. Listen, Marco Asensio missed 2 penalties. We talk about Ollie Watkins misses penalties. Yuri Tielemans has missed penalties this year. So finding, and I'm not saying we sign somebody just because they're a good penalty taker, but for me, it's a point that needs to be brought up if that is something that they are to be able to display, and this guy has displayed it within League One as well. This might be the longest I've ever gone without sharing up a stat sheet, but let's take a little look at his stat sheet here before we wrap this one up and put a bow on it. So as I say there, you can see he is if you look at his heat map, he's an all around the place defender. Or midfielder, should I say. Like, he gets back into his own box, he gets up into the opposition's box. What I want you to take a keen look at is look at his heat map in and around the penalty area. I know he takes penalties, so that's why his heat map is going to be there, but that's where he absolutely attacks that for headers. And the 2 headers I saw were they were almost 2 carbon copies of each other. Engage the defender, peel off, get that header in there. And, God knows we need people who can score with the ball in the air, because it is an area that we've not been good at of late. Looking at the amount of touches and pass attempts he has, he's no stranger to high workload inside there in midfield. In that will still midfield, you wouldn't expect any less, but 67 touches per game, 54 passes per game. So he's like, when we talk about him being that rounded midfielder, that midfielder in the mode of a Yuri Tielemans or maybe even a Ross Barkley, he's able to defend. We can see that there. His blocks, interceptions are absolutely brilliant. Can go to ground and tackle as well. Commits a fair few fouls, all right, I must say that, yeah. So like he did draw the referee's wrath a couple of times, with a couple of fouls. But look, that's part of the game too. He was able to get up, he was able to move that ball around the place as well. So he wasn't just a one-trick pony in midfield. And when we look at how he stacks up against some of the midfielders that we have here, he's not somebody who's going to be able to take that ball and going to dribble with it. He's a passer. He's a pure passer of the ball. He's he's good in the tackle, as I say, and he's good in defense too. Stacks up here like somebody like Amadou Onana, or in the defensive area, and a John McGinn, maybe a Yuri Tielemans then in the attacking area, which I think is quite good. And I can see why there would be interest in here. Now, whether the Aston Villa sign this guy or not, I would think would revolve around maybe outgoings. I don't think we're going to see Yuri Tielemans leave this year, but I do think potentially we're going to see maybe Barnett doesn't want to stick around and be a bit part player. Maybe Ross Barkley wants to move on, and play football at 31 years of age now. If any of those guys leave, we will be looking at somebody like this. The price tag, I have no idea. Transfer market of 10 million euros on him. I could see this guy going from anywhere to 20. In the markets that we have at the moment, Aston Villa get quoted 20 million pounds for a player religiously. So I don't know what he would cost, but I will say it was an interesting watch. He was a fun watch, and what he did in those 4 games that I saw was quite positive, and I liked the look of him in those games, and I would be looking forward to seeing more on him. Should we be linked with him again into the future, or maybe even we sign him? I don't know. So that's the first post-season scouting series done. I know a lot of people have been asking me about that guy I don't know how to pronounce his name. Zepanino, I think is Zepanino Redmond from Feyenoord. I don't have enough footage on him. I'm not confident to give a proper synopsis on him. But I am trying to get more and more, and if I can't, I will try and get Michael from Football Arena to come on and talk a small bit about him. Maybe even do a 5-minute pre-recorded video on him, just so that you guys can get to know all about him as well. Later on today, I have another pre-recorded scouting series coming out on Michael Murillo from Marseille, who we were linked with last night. Seemingly, we've had 2 bids rejected for him. A bit of an older player, but once again, somebody that when I watched him, I just went an absolute grown-up, a grown-up person, a real calm. I'm looking forward to doing that one as well. Different type of fullback that we'd be looking for. People aren't going to like him because of his age. I completely understand that, but pragmatism involved. If we can get the reported wage down and all that, that's coming up later on today. And then also later on tonight, this evening as well, at around 5:15, I'm going to have the wonderful Josh Norris from is going to be on, and we're going to do a little roundup of where the squad is, a kind of a keep sell loan type thing on the squad. So please join us again later on for that. Thanks a million for your time, everybody. And if you like this, please drop a like on this and subscribe and all that kind of jazz as well. We'd be delighted to have you on for the summer, because the scouting series is going nowhere. So thanks very much, everybody, for your time. In the meantime, we will be back. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.